Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you, Kimberly. It's so good to be here with you.
It's such a treat. And I have had you on the podcast, I think at least two or three times. And your Parisian Charm School, as I recall, was the most downloaded show that we had.
You did tell me that. That's very exciting. I'm flattered to know this. Wow.
And then, of course, we've been talking a lot. I guess we started in the pandemic of working together for writing.
Yes, yes. And your incredible memoir and the latest book that you're writing about midlife and updating Tranquilista. And truthfully, I've learned so much from you, and I've learned so much from hearing your stories and also what you're interested in thinking and talking about in terms of midlife. It's really refreshed my memory. It's really important because I think I turned 70 this year, actually, the beginning of this year.
Yes.
And I have a kind of amnesia about midlife. I'm it was but because of you, I had to rethink it and relook at what happened in my life from age 40 to now, because I think of that was my midlife, and a lot happened. And I think I had some words of wisdom about this, how to navigate it, because it is challenging.
It is. Yes, yes. And it's just funny as you were talking, I was looking at your hair and I was remembering how you got it cut when I saw you when you were in Paris.
Yes, yes, during COVID. And it wasn't just COVID, but also in from 20, the whole year, 2021, I moved to Connecticut to take care of my father who was dying. And there was COVID, and it just seemed like a good time to grow out my hair. I wasn't really going anywhere exciting. So I grew out my hair. So this is my natural color. And I also grew it really long. I don't know what that was about, but it got almost to my waist, and I was just fascinated to see, where is this going to go? Is it going to stop growing eventually? It was like a magical thing. But I was in Paris, as we met up in Paris a few weeks ago, and nobody said anything, wow, your hair is really long, but a Parisian woman who, oh, I won't give you any details because she'll probably hear this, but she said to me, as soon as she saw me, she said, "Oh, this hair, it is too long. You look like a ghost. It's like this, a ghost." And the French can be very blunt. And so I appreciated her honesty. And then she said, which did hurt my feelings, I was wearing my father's blazer because I wanted to bring my father to Paris with me. So I had his blazer. I brought it with me. And she said, "This blazer, it just continues the ghost look. You just look like a ghost on your head and your body." And it did seem funny at first, but then I realized maybe I ought to get my hair cut. Yes, so I have a new haircut because the French women, not particularly one French woman, told me I needed to cut the hair. And I'm glad I did, actually. I am.
It looks great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. But I think that the growing it long, I think it actually relates to midlife. I think it's relevant to what we're talking about today, because I have not had my hair long since I was a teenager, or maybe early 20s. I had my hair long. And after that, I always had short hair. I always had a little bob. And I do think that when you get into midlife and beyond, there's this incredible opportunity to reconnect with your earlier self, with your teenage years, and not just in terms of growing your hair long or short, or styles, but also in terms of what you're passionate about. You're a perfect example of this, Kimberly. You studied ballet, you took many ballet lessons when you were a girl, and then there came a point where you gave it up and you were devoted to yoga. And at this point in your life, you're able to revisit ballet and look at it with brand new eyes. And I think the thing about this age is we're also more appreciative of what we have. We may not have the same kind of stamina or agility or strength, but we have the heart. We're truly, we know so much more than we did all those many years ago.
Absolutely. And that leads me to my first big question is how has your perspective shifted through midlife? And I know you say, oh, I'm right at the tip of midlife. So I think midlife plus, and I
Like,
will be midlife plus. I will be interviewing my 80-year-old mother. So there is a
oh,
range of people
yes.
that will be part of this series. But I'm curious for you, what would you say has been the big shift maybe from 35, 40 through now?
35 to 40, first of all, I'm a writer and I teach writing, and my cri de coeur has always been the Aristotelian arc. It looks like a lopsided triangle. It goes like this, and there's a midpoint. And in terms of a story or a novel or a play or a movie, that midpoint is when the protagonist, it's called the midpoint crisis, but you could think of it as the midlife crisis. It's when the protagonist really, like, they're having difficulty and things are really challenging and something happens. And the first instinct is to go back to being a child again, or go back to being young again, or going back to where it's safe again. But the only way really through that journey, that midpoint crisis, is to bravely go forward. And it's not going to be easy. So I would say for me at age 40, I got a divorce, so I became a single mom. I found out my mother had cancer and only had a few years to live, so I brought my daughter from Los Angeles back to Connecticut. I changed my career. I had been working at Paramount Pictures and I was doing the whole Hollywood thing, and I went to teaching at Fairfield University. And I think there was a part of me that felt this is a step down. Fairfield University and taking care of a dying mother is not nearly as glamorous as working in the movie business. But here's what happened. The very first day of that class, I met Bill, Dr. Thompson, who would end up being my husband, and we're together still. And so, in the middle of all of this sense of loss, there was this gift right there. And I didn't even see it immediately. I just knew, oh my God, there's this really cute guy who's a student in my class, and I really like him. But it took me a while. Then it was like almost 10 years before we married. But this is what I would say is that when you're in your 40s, there's a lot of tumult. I think generally people 40s, 50s, there's tumult and you're not sure where you're going to land. But it's really important to go with the flow, to be very zen about it and know that you'll be all right, but it's not going to be the same. You cannot go back. You must go bravely forward, and things get better. So, no matter where anybody is in terms of this trajectory, in terms of how they're navigating midlife, just know that at the end of this darkness, there is some sunshine, there's something good, but we all have to go through that. And I think midlife is definitely one of those times where there's challenges, there's a lot to learn, but at the end of it, you're stronger and braver. And I think you have a lot more clarity. You know who you are, so just a really interesting time of life, but one that is not easy.
Right.
It's challenging. And I would say for me, once I hit 70 and I had spent the last few years taking care of my father, I was just so glad to be alive. I was my 70th birthday. The doorbell rang and the florist was there delivering flowers. And he said, somebody has a birthday. And I said, me, I'm 70 today. And he laughed. And I realized, yeah, because I sound like I'm saying, it's me, I'm 7 years old today. But it feels like that, like you get to be a child again. There's a lot of wisdom, but there's also a lightness at the end of the journey.
Right. Some playfulness. Yes. Which
Yes,
is wonderful. You're able to hold both.
yes. And not that I'm at the end of any journey. I
No,
just
you
want
are
to say
not.
that. I am not. I've got things to do.
You
I've
do.
got to, as Aunt Margaret sang in Bye Bye Birdie, not Aunt Margaret, who was it? It was Birdie saying, I've got a lot of living to do. And that's
Right.
how I feel.
Exactly. And you do. And you do have a lot and you are living a lot, which is, I think, what's always been so impressive about you. And what would you say for listeners who are like, but how do I embrace all this change or how do I weather it? How do I go through it? It's great to know, okay, I'll get through it. It's going to be okay. But in the here and now, what would you say are some of the tools that you've learned along the way?
Yes. A lot of it has to do with this trust and going with the flow. But again, going back to my dad, he really believed in positive thinking. And it may sound corny, but I would say to him, I'm really worried about such and such happening. What if that happens? And what am I going to do? And he always said, I don't have the attention span for worry. It's just so boring. I want to do something else. And I think that is a lesson to learn, that it's don't use up your energy and all of your enthusiasm for worrying about what might happen. The other thing, on a very practical level, I think that, and I don't think, I know this is a time when there's no more fooling around in terms of one's health. In the 20s and the 30s, you can really just wreck your body and it doesn't matter because you will bounce back, hopefully. But once you get, I think 40 is the cutoff, you have to really start thinking about getting enough sleep and eating well and getting exercise and finding a way to embrace compassion and also to embrace a sense of well being and a sense of peace, harmony, tranquility. And it's not just, oh, those are nice concepts. Those are the ideas that will keep us alive and healthy and moving through this world. And on a very personal level, a year and a half ago, I gave up alcohol. And that has been a game changer for me because I just feel so much clearer and I feel more present. We always want to be present, but then for me anyway, it wasn't helping me. The other thing I gave up, and not completely because it's hard to completely give up sugar, but I pretty much have cut out sugar simply because I found it a little addictive. I love it. We talked about that actually once, Kimberly. I don't know, the share size of
Yes.
M&Ms, and I would eat the entire thing myself and not share it with anyone. So not only did I feel horrible that I had just eaten an enormous quantity of M&Ms, but I felt psychically guilty because this imaginary person who I was going to share it with, I had stolen all of their M&Ms and I ate their share. And so so I had to stop doing that for myself in terms of my own psyche and my body. So that's a couple of very practical things. I'm not suggesting that anybody do that, give up M&Ms. I'm not saying that you like M&Ms, you should all have M&Ms. But I think that there's something that's the equivalent of that in everyone's life that we might look at again and say, am I really getting that much out of this? And is it hurting me more than helping me? And honestly, yeah, you could get away with these things in your 20s, 30s, but there comes a point where you want to pay attention because, again, like you probably have listeners who are in right at the beginning of midlife, 40. What you do now, I'd say at 40, is going to impact how you live your life 70 and beyond. And you want to be around. You want to be around for your family and your friends. And you probably all have a lot of living to do. So protecting one's health is essential. And then also brain health.
What would you say for brain health? Because Jamie, I am finding I'm like so much brain fog. And yesterday I went to the dentist, endodontist. I had to
I
get a root canal. So fun. But anyway, I get into the elevator and I push the button that has the fireman hat on it. I don't know why, but I just thought, oh, that's a bright button. I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening to
and
me?
then an alarm went off.
No, it's the funny thing, nothing happened. But they probably wait for people to push a couple times because dummies like me push the nice fireman button.
Oh my God.
But I'm curious.
You probably just wanted a hunky fireman to
I know,
come in
right?
through the door.
Come save me from the endodontist. But yeah, for you, like what are some things that you found to be most helpful for cognitive health? Because we need it.
Yeah. I also had I wrote about this in my last newsletter. I have a Substack newsletter on creativity. So I wrote about how the last time I visited my daughter in Baltimore, I took the train from Hudson to Penn Station. And I was like, oh, the train is boarding. I must get on the train right away. Excuse me, get out of my way. This is my train. And I'm on the train and I realized that there's something odd about it. Everyone seemed to have a reserved seats. And I thought maybe I'm just in the wrong car. And anyway, as it turned out, I was on the wrong train. It was heading to Washington, D.C., and it was not, I could have visited you. There was no stop in Baltimore. And the conductor actually, he was so nice to me. He said, all right, just go to this car, wait, and you'll get off in Philadelphia, and I will take you to where you're supposed to be. So this conductor escorted me to the Philadelphia station. And since there was about a half an hour before the right train would arrive to take me to Baltimore, he gave me a tour of the station. And it was just like really lovely. I think the thing is, all right, and I'm going to tell you one other thing that happened during that
Yes.
visit, and then I'll tell you the
Do.
lesson learned. So my daughter lives in Baltimore in this section with row houses. They all have porches and they all look exactly the same. So I left the house and then I went to my car to get something because I had just arrived and I think maybe a suitcase. And then I came back, but I opened the door and there was this pregnant woman sitting on the couch. And I said, who are you? She said, who are you? And then her husband came out because he was like Papa Bear, going to protect his pregnant wife. And the good thing is he said, who are you? I said, I'm Callan's mom. And then they were like, oh, okay, you're in the wrong house. And they were totally nice about it. Although my daughter was really mortified. But here's the thing. These things happen. And you've done this. You've told me little stories. And it's actually pretty funny. There's nothing terrible that happens. And people are just really nice. This is the thing that I've discovered from some little mishaps is that people are really nice. And that's the great thing about being 70 is that they give me the benefit of the doubt now. They're nice. People like, oh, she's not young, so they're nice. But in terms of trying to keep the brain healthy, I do my Duolingo. I'm practicing my French every day, and I think that's important. I also play the concertina. And I practice my concertina, which is very difficult. And that's, I think, to do something that's challenging and a little bit like a bit of a brain puzzle is very helpful. My form of Sudoku. And I know you with ballet, certainly, that's got to be keeping your brain young. It's keeping your body young and strong, but it's also, you have to think about it, right? You can't just fling across the room and not know what you're doing. You have to engage all your senses. And I'm working on a novel. I've been working on it actually since 2018. It's almost done. And that's one huge jigsaw puzzle, a novel, because a novel is plot and characters, and there's a lot of details. And this one has a little bit of a mystery to it. So I have to keep track of my clues. And I think that is really keeping my brain engaged. I think the most important thing for everyone on a general level is to bring something into your life that you, one, look forward to doing right now, but also that has this sense of future. Actually, this is something else you and I, Kimberly, have talked about, that you're not just doing ballet lessons, but there's a performance up ahead. So you have this thing that you're looking forward to and you're getting ready for it and you're imagining what will it be like, and this excitement builds. And I think that is really important for us to have at every age, wherever we are, something where there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a little reward at the end, because it pushes you forward and it keeps you engaged. And of course, anything that you're doing with other people is important. I think that it's not good to be isolated. It's not good to be isolated at any age, but I think that when one gets to be, say, my age, it's more of a challenge to make new friends and to engage in your community and to do something completely new, because you tend to have your group and you have your routine and you're comfortable. But I think it behooves all of us to do something that's outside of our comfort level.
Yes, for sure. And Jamie, that Baltimore store, just a story, kills me every time. I've heard it a few times because you haven't shared it with the listeners yet. And it just so makes me laugh because I so see you and I so see how easily that stuff happens. And it just how like embarrassing. You're at
Yeah.
like somebody else's home. So I love it.
But my first reaction was like, who are you? What are you doing in my daughter's
Totally.
home?
Just
I was so
kills
sure.
me. I know, right? You're like, get out of my daughter's home. Pregnant lady.
I had this idea that in between the time I had walked out of her house to go to the car to get the suitcase, I imagined that some woman came over and was visiting my daughter. And although I don't know why I said, "Who are you?" in that accusatory way. So it just seemed really strange, that's all.
And it's funny, we react without even necessarily thinking or asking, could I be in the wrong home? But no, of course
Right.
not.
No, I was sure I must be in the right home. The embarrassing part is that I actually did it a second time. Second time, somebody, my daughter's in-laws were dropping me off, and in my own defense, they dropped me off in front of this other house. And so I was like, opening, and I had the key. They gave me the key to their house because they weren't home. So I'm like, this darn key, it's not working. What's the matter? Maybe I've got the wrong key. And I had to try every single key. And then my daughter's father-in-law said, that's the wrong house. So I was pretty embarrassed, but thank God they weren't home. No, so nobody knows I did it a second time.
It's our secret. Nobody knows.
Please don't tell anybody about this.
The other thing that I love about you, though, Jamie, is it's not just, oh, I try new things. Yes, you've tried new things, but even I recall, and I think it was the start of the pandemic, but you started sketching or drawing.
Yes.
Now it's new to you, right?
Yes. This goes back to what I said earlier, things that you embraced when you were younger. When I was a teenager, I was always sketching. I thought I would major in art. The writing thing didn't come until I was about in my late teens. But before that, I wanted to be a fashion illustrator until an art teacher told me I really wasn't very good. But anyway, I joined a sketchbook club here in the Hudson River Valley, which was really amazing, and I fell in love with it. And this also led to I got a job as a docent at a local art gallery, which has always been a dream ever since Sex and the City and Charlotte. Do you remember this? Charlotte works at an art gallery and she wears all these cute outfits. And I thought, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to hang out with the artsy crowd like Charlotte and wear cute outfits. And that sounds like fun. So one day I saw they have a new exhibit up. I walked in there and my thought was I would ask if I could volunteer as a docent. And I walked around, I looked, they said I could, wasn't open yet. They said, oh yeah, you can go look at the art. So I looked at the art, I loved the art. And then just said in a very naive way, I said, oh, I would love to work here. And they said, oh, we're having an orientation next week. Why don't you come? And in my mind, I thought I would be a volunteer. And they said, no, we're paying you $20 an hour. And at first I thought maybe I should just tell them they don't have to pay me. I'll just volunteer. But then I really felt proud of myself at 70 that I've got a job as a docent and I'm making $20 an hour. And it's a completely new field for me. And I love, love, love being around art. I love learning about art. And the most important thing for me would be the people who come in to look at the art. Yeah, I was gonna say, oh, they all look like the girls from Sex and the City, but that's not true. That would be a lie. But they, in my imagination, they do.
Right.
But they all are really artsy. And I feel I learn a lot just by looking at the people who come in to look at the art. It's truly an education.
Yes, I'm so proud of you. I didn't realize you were doing this. Look at you, Jamie,
Yes,
always doing something
I don't
new.
know why. Yes, I love it. I learned this from my mother. My mother in her 60s took up horseback riding. And this is a woman she's long gone, but she had a disability, a pretty severe disability. So walking was a problem, but she could ride a horse. And that's my role model. My mother with riding a horse in her 60s. She also took piano lessons. And then my father with just being so positive that they really guided me through this time. And just to open it up to all your listeners, I think that this is true for all. I know for you, it's your grandmother, that there are these people who came into our lives and they inspired us. And the most important thing we can do, the most helpful thing we can do, is to take what they taught us and move it forward and pass it along. I think that's legacy, right?
It is, which, brings me to what I wanted to ask you about legacy, right? It's as you think about for women entering midlife now, are there any things that you would like to say to them or that you're like, I wish I knew this, or I would say this to my 40-year-old self?
Yes. Certainly take care of your body, take care of your mind. This is what you've been given. Take good care of it. I actually just have to tell you one funny thing about legacy. I think we have this idea that we're going to live forever, and we're not. So we have to think about things like what we leave in our house. So I'll give you a little example. We had a fire last March. Maybe I told you this
You
already.
do. That's why I'm giggling, but go ahead.
All right. I'm a Frenchy French Parisian kind of gal, and I wrote about French women. So I have an extensive lingerie collection, and some very tame, some not so tame. Anyway, we had this fire, and 10 hunky firemen march upstairs to the bedroom because we also have an upstairs fireplace. It's connected to the downstairs fireplace through the chimney. So they hack away at this closet next to the chimney, but that's my lingerie closet. So they've got garters and stockings, and brassieres and corsets all over the floor. And I didn't see them actually throwing them around, but I saw the aftermath. That I walked upstairs after everything was okay. Everything turned out okay, but there my stuff was. I was mortified. I was really embarrassed. No big deal, but I would say this, it motivated me to clean out stuff and get rid of stuff that if say my grandchildren had to go through, I wouldn't want that. I think, all right, I'll give your listeners to age 55. Then you need to do a purge. Okay, girls, ladies? Because it'll be embarrassing later and you won't be as motivated. So age 55, you've got to start doing your art of tidying up. Anyway, legacy, I do think that it's not only is it absolutely necessary, but it'll also make this part of your life, the midlife part of your life, it'll give it more direction and more energy. So if you think, what do I want to leave the world? What do I want my family to know about? What advice do I have to give? This is an amazing time to write a memoir because you've lived a certain amount of life and you have wisdom to impart. It's That's your legacy. It's not simply, oh, I have all of these great photographs that I want to hand down or I'm going to give away things, but it's really about your essence. Like, what do you know that you want to pass along so that other people can benefit from all your experience, what you know, what you've struggled through, and what you have learned along the way. And that's a gift. That is a true legacy. That's better than just getting your great grandma's cashmere sweater.
Right.
Although I think great grandma's cashmere sweater is very nice, but I think there's some wisdom that's most important.
Absolutely. And before I ask you my last question, Jamie, is there anything else you want to say about midlife or to women in midlife, anywhere around the frame of midlife that we haven't touched on yet today?
I think friendship. I haven't really talked about friendship, and you particularly with Tranquility du Jour, you have a community, you have a coterie, you have friends who are navigating the same tumultuous waters as you, and you can help one another. And there'll be moments where you feel like you've got this, you know everything, you're doing it really well, and maybe your good friend is really struggling. So you can help one another because it's going to go back and forth. There's going to be a lot of things ahead from, I don't want to depress anybody, but their loss of grandparents, loss of parents, loss of pets. And I know you know about that. And all of this is not trivial, it's not easy. And through friendship and love is everything, you can, yeah, find your way through that with joie de vivre. It's all part of it. It's part of being alive and it's delicious. And if everything was smooth sailing, then it would be boring. You want a little challenge, a little struggle. It makes it all the more sweeter.
I like that because it's like you hold them, right? Delicious and heartbreaking. You hold them both. And just hearing you say delicious and knowing that you are a fellow Francophile. Before I ask you the last question again, what are some of your deliciousness or the pleasures that you like to infuse into your days? You think about, I have a little bit of Paris in my New York farmhouse.
Oh, if you one day you will visit, but this house is full. First of all, the name is La Belle Farm. It's full of references to France, and there's full of little Eiffel Tower statues and tea towels from France that I have one in the kitchen that I framed. And there's a lot of reminders and souvenirs from France, but more than that, both of us, my husband and myself, try to infuse everyday daily life with beauty, with gentility, and a sense of ceremony, because I think that is a very French thing, where even if you're just having a cup of tea, there's a little bit of, you put it in a beautiful china teacup, the way you present it, the way you honor this moment in time. So there's apéro before dinner, and there, although mine is non-alcoholic, but there are these moments where just the way you would prepare a meal, the way you get dressed, that you wear something that's pleasing and that makes you happy and brings joy into your life, flowers, fresh flowers. And it's about paying attention. It's about, and that's about life, right? Not to take anything for granted, but to appreciate all the small things.
And this red lipstick, absolutely. Listeners or viewers, if you can see, but Jamie is wearing a color that I adore and that I sent to her because when I saw her in Paris, she's, I must have that. So,
Yes, I love it so much.
so my last question, the name of the podcast, Tranquility du Jour. And how do you find tranquility in every day? And I think you've just touched on a lot of the pieces, but is there anything that we haven't touched on that brings you a sense of tranquility in your daily life?
This is going to sound quite ordinary, but I take a nap every day. And that just, it's everything to me, my nap, because I feel completely refreshed afterwards. And I feel I'm taking care of myself. It's a little indulgent. And I learned that from my grandmother. My French grandmother took a nap every day. So because she did, I feel I have permission to do it. And it just, when I wake up from my nap, I feel really revived and energetic. And I do my best creative work as I wake up from my nap. Because you're close to the muse, you're close to the angels after a nap. Oh, and one last thing. Jackie Kennedy, when she was at Simon and Schuster, she would, after lunch, take off her dress and in her slip, in her office, she'd close the curtains, lock the door, in her slip, lie down on the couch at the editor's office and take a nap every day. So it's good enough for Jackie O. It's good enough for me.
Absolutely. Do you have a best time? Is it after lunch for you also?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
So
Thank you so much.
thank you, Kimberly. I love talking to you, and I love this topic so much.
Thank you. It's such a treat to have you back on the show.
Thank you.